Today's topic is mobile wallet. I'm from Japan, and every time I go back there, it's amazing because I was so amazed a year ago or so, maybe 2 years, that you can use your cell phone to pay for your train tickets. Every time I go back there is something new. Oh, wow, I can pay convenience store. Now you can pay for a cab. Now, if you ride a cab in Japan, it's probably easier to pay with your cell phone than try to use your American Express. So it has really changed a lot. Today's event is a very special one, so I'm glad you're all here. Let me introduce you to Scott Ellison, who is going to be our moderator. You can see his full bio on our flyer, which I'm sure you saw on your seat. He is the Vice President of Mobile and Wireless. He's been in mobile for the last 20 years, and he said he knows all this in this section since the bag phones and the what was the other one? I can't read my handwriting. Bridge phones, brick phones. So I had to ask him what they were. See, I'm very young, so I only know the small phones. Why do you all laugh? Anyways, he started his career at PCIA, and he used to lobby for the spectrums. Another thing he did tell me, but I told him I wasn't going to say, but he does get a lot of phones for testing, and he does, if it's not a good one, he does throw them against the wall. So I did tell him, but we're not going to tell you which phones he actually threw against the wall. But please join me to welcome Scott.
Well, thank you, Aiko, and thank you for VLAB for hosting this and asking me to moderate what I think is one of the most interesting topics in mobile going forward. Aiko mentioned that she was from Japan. I'll say that I'm from Washington. I just moved out here last year, and I actually started my career in mobile back in 1990s, Aiko noted, as a lobbyist. So I was 22 years old, straight out of college. I had my bag phone, because I wasn't senior enough to have an actual brick phone, which was state-of-the-art at the time. I'd go up to Capitol Hill and evangelize this new thing called digital, and I have to explain to senators and congressmen and legislative assistants that digital would be an amazing technology, an amazing thing that would happen. Everything would be converted to ones and zeros, and phones would get really small. You'd carry them all the time, and literally people would nod off in the middle of the meetings. They'd be drumming their fingers. I remember Senator Hollings told me years ago, son, I hope you don't quit your day job, because it sounded just so far off and crazy. And I'd like to think I'm kind of young too. I'm 42, so I'd like to think that 40 is the new 20. So anyway, it's been amazing to be in this industry now for 20 years. And as Aiko noted, I'm the VP these days of Mobile and Wireless at IDC. I've been there since about 2001. I did a 5-year hiatus of startups, which I think are the area a lot of you are in terms of the audience. And when I left mobile in '95 and got back into it in 2001, remarkably, not a damn thing had changed. We were still the same people and the same companies lobbing the same grenades and hurling the same mud at each other over the same old issues. But what was amazing in 2001 was it was right before mobile was going to take off, particularly in the US. In 2002, we had the first color screen phones. In 2003, American Idol did something pretty interesting. They did text message voting, and that's how text messaging took off in the States. Ringtones took off, and it was only a few more years, 2007, we would get the iPhone. So what we've seen is an enormous amount of change and innovation. And if you've been in this industry long enough, this innovation seems to come in waves. It comes about every 5 years or so. In 1990, we had the MicroTAC, which was introduced by Motorola. That was the first flip phone, and that was state-of-the-art at only like $800 with a battery life of about 20 minutes of talk time. But man, you were cool if you had one, and that was definitely not me at that point in my career. In '95, we had the introduction of digital. In 2002, we had the first color screen phone. In 2003, SMS took off. In 2007, the iPhone was introduced. And now here we are closing out a pretty amazing decade, heading into the next decade, and everyone's asking, what's the next big thing? So one of the customer bases I spend a lot of my time with these days is IDC's Wall Street clients out in New York. I spend several weeks there every quarter, along with our financial clients here. And what I'm telling them, I think there are 3 really big things that are going to be the next big things that will come together in the coming decade. I think the three things are the mobile internet, device-to-device file transfer, and the broader context, the broader opportunity of mobile commerce. So today's panel around mobile wallet takes those three together very, very neatly. And when I think about it, so many of the things I've evangelized in the past, people I know that are now since retired and running around the country in their G5s, wish I had their stock options at the time, but they've gone out and evangelized and actually did come to pass. It was really a question not of if, it was a question of when and how. And I think that what we'll be talking about today in the panel and during the Q&A, we'll be talking about companies that are actually making that when come sooner rather than later, and I hope they'll all tell us about how they see that occurring. So with that, I'm going to be introducing our first speaker, which is Tyler Sloat. He's the CFO of OboPay. He'll be talking for about 10 minutes, and then he'll hand over the podium to Wenceslao, who is co-CEO of Bling Nation. After those two about 10-minute panels, we'll have several more panelists join us. They'll talk for a few minutes. Then we'll have about 20 minutes or so of Q&A that'll be directed mainly by me as the moderator to the panelists. We'll also be encouraging the panelists to ask questions of each other. And then we'll have about half an hour for Q&A from the audience. So you should all have a yellow card. Please write down on that yellow card questions you may have for the Q&A for the audience, and then pass those right before Q&A begins with the audience to the end of the aisles, and then those will be passed up to us, and we'll take questions from there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tyler Sloat of OboPay. I'm going to switch it.
Thanks, Scott. Is this good? And thanks, VLAB, for having this panel today and this presentation. It's great. I think it's pretty clear the universal appeal for mobile payments is growing. That's why you all are here right now. That's why I'm here, and that's why I joined OboPay about 2.5 years ago. I'm the CFO at OboPay. I also run treasury operations and business intelligence for the company. Next 10 minutes, I just plan to tell you a little bit about who we are, how we view the market globally, and I'll paint out some differences between what we view as developed markets and emerging markets, and some of the challenges that we're going to face, but also some of the applications and products that we're bringing to consumers, and the reason why we view this as such a huge market. At the end of the day, OboPay is around because we view it's a huge market, but we only view it's a huge market because we really think that mobile payments, mobile money, mobile wallet, whatever you want to call it, is going to change people's lives. And when I say change people's lives, I mean in developed market, it might just be the convenience factor that somebody has, whether you're in Japan or the US and you're paying a taxi cab driver from your mobile in about 5 seconds as opposed to trying to run through a credit card, or whether you're really providing financial services to a truly unbanked person in an emerging market that's going to allow them to start a small business. And that's our passion. That's what we work really hard for. There's a lot of challenges to do it, but we do believe that this is going to be a huge market opportunity. One of the figures I saw recently was, and I cannot remember the source, was $7 trillion in volume in the next 5 years through mobile payments. And that's a big, big number. We'd like to have a lot of it. So how was OboPay founded? How did it come about? My boss, Carol Riolini, who I view as a true visionary in this market, she was in Africa doing some volunteer work. She was essentially retired at the time, had a history of about 5 startups, and back at IBM Consulting, I think, originally. And she was in Africa in a small village and was witnessing people literally bring bags of cash to these small retail outlets to pay for their top-up minutes. And she had this epiphany, and she realized, you know what, there's no infrastructure here, there's no banks, yet there is an infrastructure here, it's mobile. And everybody had a mobile phone, but a lot of people didn't even have a wallet. And she said, well, this could be the perfect marriage of existing technology and a growing technology combined with a service that everybody needs, and that's payments and banking services. And so she came back, she did some research, she contacted her friends in the Philippines, in Japan, Africa, and start talking to people who are actually, they might have started things or doing projects, and what she realized is that every demographic was going to provide a little bit different nuance in what somebody would want to do with their mobile when it came to mobile payments. And so she had this vision, taking all that in, saying, well, the ideal is to build a payment platform, a global platform that could scale, that could be interoperable, that could be open, could be secure, and that it could meet a whole bunch of different consumer needs, whether they're different payment applications, whether they're different account types, but one platform to meet all of that. And that's what we're trying to build at OPay. It's a Herculean task, and we wake up every morning with that goal in mind, though. So we talked about market opportunity. I mean, she clearly did that research. We are not the only ones doing that. I'm actually really excited about this panel today, because if you look at who's sitting up here, we are all attacking a market in a little bit different way. But the reason we view that there's a market, if you look at what's happening globally, and there has been a shift over the last couple of years. Scott just talked about the shift in mobile. But if you look at the topology, there's about 6 billion people in the world right now. There's about 4 billion handsets out there, but only about 1 billion bank accounts, 1.6 billion credit cards. I think there's more debit cards than that. But there is a proliferation of mobile that's happening around the globe because of a decreased cost of infrastructure, the mobile handset itself, decreased cost of time in terms of minutes, as well as a medium for which people can do many more things with. And banking is growing, but it's understandable why it's growing a lot slower. I mean, banking requires a physical infrastructure built out of brick and mortar, and that is branches, that is physical plastic on cards. And that's just going to take a lot longer time, and it's expensive. And a lot of emerging markets in particular, the payback may not be there for banks or whoever it is going to undertake that. So mobile, why not use that? We believe that mobile is going to do to financial services essentially what it did to telco. I mean, we have a lot of friends, everybody could probably look around, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room who do not have a landline at home, they just have their mobile. And we believe that's where the market is going with this. So the opportunity is there. We believe the opportunity is there. I'm going to speak factually, right, because that's what I believe is fact. But then you have to look at the different demographics. And if you're going to attack this opportunity, you've got to know what the differences are between the different markets that you go into. And we really paint it between what are the developed markets and the emerging markets, and really what are the commonalities within those markets and what are the differences. And if you understand those, you can actually go bring a product and a service to market. So when we look at it, we have this reverse triangle the way we looked at it. And one of the commonalities is that in every market there is a population of banked people. I mean, everybody in this room, there's a population of unbanked and a population of underbanked. So when we talk about banked, you just have access to financial instruments. I mean, that's just at the core, that's the definition, right? You can go out and get financial instruments if you want to, and you have access to them. Underbanked might be that you have some limited access. If you look at India as a culture, it's something like 300 to 350 million bank accounts right now. However, the majority of those accounts are non-operating, right? They are literally bank accounts, I think they call them current accounts, where you might have some rupees in there, but they do not transact against those accounts. They are just a bank account. A lot smaller population of actual active operating bank accounts. And then there's the unbanked, where you literally do not have access to any financial instruments at all. There's nothing available to you in your village, in your town, and you are you work off of cash or you work off of trade, but you could have a cell phone. What are those are commonalities. What are some of the differences in these markets? And the reason I painted this is because OPay, we plan and we do, and I'll talk about what we're doing right now in a minute, to address both the emerging, developed, medium markets, all with the same platform, all the same set of account structures that we would support, all the same type of use cases. However, some will be used a lot more than others in different markets. Some of the differences that you need to understand is that, okay, there's language differences. And that's not something to undervalue there in terms of the work that it would take to be able to meet the needs in different demographics culturally as well. there's different regulatory environments. In every country you go into, there's going to be a different regulatory framework set up by a central bank that you're going to have to play under. And that regulatory framework could be from what we would consider an open environment where you're essentially allowed to go in and do anything with any kind of partner that you want to, all the way to completely closed, where you have a sophisticated banking infrastructure that is controlled from some regulatory body that really dictates what you can do and how you can bring it to market. So you have to understand those things. As well, the use cases are going to be different, as I mentioned, in different markets. Some use cases, you take India, you take the Philippines, you take M-Pesa in Kenya. One of the primary initial forays for mobile payments was really to facilitate prepaid top-up, because those are markets that have 80+% prepaid phone. You take the U.S., it's almost the opposite. And so what are the use cases here in the U.S.? We view that family teen card as one of the use cases to bring to market, the capability for a parent to send a child money as fast as a text message to go, and through the use of a prepaid debit card to be able to get that money out at ATM or swipe it at a point of sale instantly. That's a use case that we see has traction here. So once you understand your market, you have to bring a product and service to that market, and we believe that make that product and service a viable option for a consumer and for a partner, you have to be innovative. You have to bring something to the market that would actually get, at the end of the day, that consumer or that merchant to want to use it. And why are they going to want to use it? Whether it's more economical for them, whether there's a huge convenience factor, whether there is no other alternative and you can figure out a way to bring it to them at a cost that makes sense to you. Innovation absolutely matters. If you look at M-Pesa, you have the Economist article. What they did is they took mobile and they combined it with agent, right? And they leveraged their retail presence and they created a cash-in, cash-out network to be able to facilitate domestic remittances, essentially. And there was a huge urban movement where people were going into the cities like Nairobi and wanting to send money back to their villages and towns, and this is what facilitated it. I would argue, I haven't heard them say this, but the use cases that came out of the M-Pesa product that they brought to market, I would guess they couldn't even anticipate that. And it became a product within itself. I mean, it's very successful. We all know that, and it's great. But the use case of somebody being willing to pay a couple hundred basis points to go into an agent and give them cash, a Kenyan shilling, and then get on a train to go to the next town and then take out that cash, the fact that they're willing to pay a couple hundred basis points to do that just for the convenience of safety, because it was so insecure for them to travel with cash in their pocket. I don't think they brought the product to market with that in mind, but that is what it's used for, oftentimes. That's innovation, right? If you look at Smart in the Philippines, they're also innovative. They're a pioneer, effectively, in this market. They took mobile and agent. They did what M-Pesa did. I think they did before them. But they also added debit card to it as well, and bank link. So it's a hybrid model, right? So you're focusing on some banked customers, you're providing another instrument, and then you're providing an SVA product for the cash in, cash out. Innovation is what you need. I mean, we'll hear from PayPal today, and you could argue that from a payments perspective, they're very, very innovative. They took the medium that existed at the time, which was internet and email, and they created an entire payment network out of that, right? So we're focused on mobile. They're focused on mobile too. So what is OvoPay? I mentioned before, OvoPay, our goal, our vision, and what we're doing right now is to build a global platform that is safe, secure, scalable, open, interoperable, and trusted. And within that platform, being able to link in different types of funding sources through different type of accounts, link in different type of partners through those channels, whether it's a bill pay aggregator or prepaid top-up provider, as well as different type of touch points for consumers to be able to use the service. That includes a merchant network as well. So right now, what we are doing in the US and in India, where we have live operations in both places, P2P. In the US, you can actually, with an OvoPay account, just send money instantly to somebody. If they have an OvoPay account, it is instant funding. If they don't, they'll get a text message that says, go to ovopay.com, pick up your money. you open up an account. It's a stored value product that you can link to not hold a balance, or you can actually just say, I don't want to open an account up, and just give us your bank account number. We'll stick it into your account for you. In India, it's a bank link product right now. It'll be stored value as well, with mobile top-up and bill pay, with online payments. We have online payments both in the U.S. and in India, as well as small businesses, right? Essentially the unacquired merchant and the long tail of merchant, which is the way even the associations are looking to grow their networks as well. And then the OPay family account. We issue out a prepaid debit card here in the U.S. And it is a market within itself. We add a mobile quotient to it, but there is a huge market for prepaid. In the U.S., we allow that prepaid card to be mobilized so you can send money off of and receive money onto that card instantly, just via text. And we view that to be a huge product offering as well. So how are you going to define a successful mobile payment solution? Our mind, I have 1 minute left, is that what you're saying? Yeah, all right. I'll be here for a long time, In our mind, it is all about the ecosystem that you can create with the partners around you. And if you are going to provide an end-to-end solution, meaning that you're going to be the first and last mile, as well as participate within the medium that happens, all the transaction that happens in between, you've got to be able to bring in partners and plug in different players into that ecosystem. You have to be partner friendly. You have to allow for participation on revenue. You have to be able to show why a partner would want to do this and what the ROI is going to be for them. As well, you need to make sure that you have a business model that's sustainable and that you can have something that's scalable and that you can bring out on a global fashion. And that's what we're doing. So partners, these are the strength of our partners right now. I mean, there's just a few of them. Actually don't have any of our India partners up there. I realized that about 10 seconds too late after I sent this out. But clearly Nokia, BlackBerry, MasterCard, Societe Generale, they're all big partners of ours. And we are doing things with all of them. Let me just describe what Nokia Money is. Nokia announced Nokia Money in Stuttgart in September. Their goal is to bring financial services to the emerging markets, initially leveraging the retail footprint and distribution might that they have. They're top 5 brand in the world, #1 trusted brand in the world, and that is their goal, and we are doing that with them. MasterCard MoneySend is a big partner. It is launched here in the U.S. right now. And it is the capability. MasterCard's vision initially is to be able to send money from any MasterCard off to another MasterCard just by knowing the recipient's cell phone number. Show up as a debit and a credit. We run a lot of the portion of that transaction as well. They will globalize that and bring other use cases to market with MoneySend. That's it. We think there's a huge opportunity here, and we're excited for the panel. I am.
Before I introduce the next speaker, and thank you very much, Tyler. So I'm going to introduce Wenceslao Casares, who's the founder and co-CEO of Bling Nation. He'll be talking for about the next 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, VLAB, for the invitation. Since Aiko started by saying that she's from Japan, and Scott mentioned that he's from Washington, they gave me a perfect excuse to say that Tyler's from Hawaii. And I am from Patagonia, and I love starting I never get to start a talk by saying that I'm from Patagonia, and of course I'd like to mention that, but because that's where the cradle of mobile innovation is, in case you didn't know. So Bling Nation was started in 2007. We are back. We are based here in Palo Alto. We are backed by Lightspeed Venture Partners. We have we're very lucky to have an advisory board composed of people like John Reed, who was a former chairman of Citibank, Carl Pascarella, former CEO of Visa, and Jeff Stifler, former president of American Express and Digital Insight. My partner, Meyer Malk, and I have been working together for a little over 10 years. We've done 3 successful startups before. We have raised over $200 million, and we had exits for over $2 billion. What we are doing now at Bling Nation is enabling you as a consumer to pay at the merchant point of sale by simply tapping your phone. When you're at a retail location, when you're done, instead of handing over a credit card or cash, you simply tap your phone and you are done. And this is roughly or quickly how it works.
It's this easy. The merchant enters the purchase amount on the point-of-sale terminal. When ready, the consumer simply taps their Bling tag, and the transaction is processed in seconds. An SMS text approval is sent instantly to the consumer's mobile phone, providing all transaction details, as well as checking account balances. Bling Nation, the nation's mobile payments leader.
So right after you tap your phone, you get a text message that says you just paid $4.60 at Joe's coffee shop, and this is your checking account balance. And if you have any points associated with that account, this is how many points you have. From the consumer point of view, the key benefits of this is that for most people, it's more convenient to pay with a phone. It's easier to reach for your phone than reaching for the wallet. That you are not carrying any personal information with you. These tags don't have your name or an account number linked to it. Also, people really like the feedback and the control of getting an instant text message that says, what did just happen, did it get approved, and how much money do I have left in my checking account. We also offer richer rewards that you won't get with a credit card. And we have a number of programs that are tied around the local community and the shopping local that I'll explain in a second that we have been getting great feedback on. We started deploying this in May, and we are focused in what we call islands. For us, an island is a combination of a community that has at least $250 million in combined bank deposits, but less than $3 billion in deposits, and a community in which the local financial institutions, the local community bank, and the local credit unions have at least 50% market share. If the large banks of America and Wells Fargo's of this world have more than 50% market share, we don't look at that community. And within those communities, we look for financial institutions that have at least $300 million in deposits overall, but less than $2 billion in deposits, and that have at least 20% market share in that particular deposit and in that particular community. When we find such a bank in such a community, we call that bank a first bank, and it's an anchor bank, that first bank that we deploy. And we first deploy this anchor bank, and after that, we can deploy up to 5 additional banks. It takes us, we think it takes us about 9 to 18 months to mature these islands, each community, in terms of usage. And we always launch with a debit product, that kind of payment that I just showed. That's how we launch. But then on top of that basic functionality, we also layer rewards products, marketing products, prepaid, and even credit products. We have mapped the US with this criteria, and we found 500 communities and a little over 500 banks, more or less evenly distributed, about 100 in each region, in the Midwest, in the Northeast, the Southeast, the Southwest, and what we call the West is a very big West, so we can have about 100 banks fit in there. We started deploying this in our first deployment was in a small town called La Junta in near Colorado Springs in Colorado in May. This is not Palo Alto. This is so before this is our first real deployment with a real bank, and before we did this, just to iron out, to make sure that everything's working well, we did a trial run with without a bank, because something goes wrong with it. We wanted to do a trial run without a bank, and we used Facebook employees here when they were still in University Avenue, and University Avenue merchants. And of course, when we were showing we had excellent results with that trial run, and when we show that to bankers across the nation, they say, well, but what works in Palo Alto doesn't really work here. So we went to the other extreme, and we went to a farm community in Colorado, where our average user is 45 years old, and we have a lot of people over 60 using this. And I'd like to show just some pictures of town. They don't show very well there, but to show that it's a very real town and a very real deployment. A little over 4 months after that first deployment, we reached 50% of these first bank's debit card users. We have reached 70% of the merchants in that community are accepting Bling Nation. 65% of the volume, the debit volume of this bank is done by Bling Nation, and we're doing about 5.6 transactions per consumer, and the same consumers are doing about 11 debit card transactions. So this is a very, very quick take-up that we've had very quickly in this first deployment. Since this, we've been deploying a bank every month, and we have 4 deployments up and running, and we expect to finish this year with 1 deployment in each region, and we hope to be soon deploying a community near you so you can Bling it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wenceslao. What we're going to do now is we're going to have about 20 minutes where we're going to have our 3 additional panelists introduce themselves, talk about what their company is doing, and in a few minutes just talk about what they're hearing so far, what they're seeing in the market, and then we'll have Q&A driven mainly by me for about 10 minutes, and then we'll be opening up Q&A to the rest of the audience. So I just want to remind you again, you have yellow cards. Please fill out your questions and pass those to the end of the VLAB volunteers. Those will be passed up forward for the audience Q&A portion. So with that, I'd like to introduce Margaret from Boku.
Hi, I'm Margaret Mackenzie. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations and Chief Financial Officer at Boku, and I feel compelled to say that I'm from California. And looking at the lineup, I might actually be the only native Californian at the table, so here you go. Boku is a mobile payments company that allows folks to purchase content online using their mobile phone, and actually using the credit that's available on their mobile phone bill, whether prepaid or postpaid. Where we're focusing Boku today is in online gaming. So whether you're playing a game on a big gaming site, or if you're in a casual social game on a social network, you can pay for content you need on that site simply by entering your mobile phone number. And this is a pretty easy thing to do. Essentially, you enter your mobile phone number. You don't have to open an account. You don't have to enter your credit card number online. You enter your mobile phone number. We send you a text message back to make sure it's you, and off you go. You're still in the game. Because this is so fast, we're finding a tremendous amount of uptake in the digital gaming market, in the casual gaming market online. And people are telling us that it's not only easy, it's fun to do. The merchants, the publishers that are publishers of these games, and the people that develop apps for gaming websites really like this type of mobile payment solution because it helps them reach customers that they might not otherwise be able to reach, customers who may not otherwise have been able to pay, as Taylor described, or they might just have chosen not to pay with the other mechanisms at their disposal. So we're bringing publishers, merchants, new customers, which they're very pleased about, which is one of the reasons they like mobile payments. Boku is particularly good at this because we can bring more customers than any other mobile payment company today. And this is true because Boku is enabled on just about 2 billion mobile phones worldwide across 56 countries and about 186 carriers. We're growing, just to sum up, we're growing very, very fast, at least as fast as the mobile market, which is pretty exhausting these days. And I can see one of my guys moving around in the back, and so I know he'll kill me if I don't mention that because we're growing fast, we're hiring. So if you're interested, let me know afterwards, and we'd love to talk with you. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Margaret. Our next speaker is Duprat, who's with PayPal Mobile.
Yeah, you have a busy slide to look at here. But first of all, a little word about me. I'm Duprat. I'm French, so another nationality from south of France, Bordeaux wine, kind of area. The father of my grandfather was wine merchant in Bordeaux, so we have wine in our blood. Anyway, so 20 years of experience in the payment systems. I've had some pretty senior position at Verifone, Hypercom, HP, building, acquiring infrastructure, some of the key innovation at Verifone with Verix operating system, multi-application systems, IP terminals and stuff like that. So, and the same with Hypercom. I spent a lot of time also in the Silicon Valley working with a startup in the NFC space, biometric, mobile biometry, and also fraud management systems. So pretty round up, past and career on the mobile and payment altogether. A little note about myself. Yeah, I have a lot of arrows in my back. I have really innovated a lot in my career, pushing a lot of new ideas and new concepts, and so I have, it tickles a little bit sometimes in the back, but that's fun. And so a little bit about myself. I fix everything at home, so. My family is really after me for fixing everything in the home that doesn't work. So Dad, fix this, fix that. Internet is not working, whatever. The fridge, the washing machine, whatever. So we have, in fact, there is a company in France named Darty, and you call the people from Darty, they fix everything. So I'm called the man from Darty at home. Anyway, I have also a few hobbies, and I work, pretty deep on the hobbies. I've studied astrophotography, and I'm doing spiral galaxies. That's pretty fun. I'm doing also submarine modelings, and I build a typhoon, which can go underwater and do a lot of stuff. So you can reach me at this email address here, and I'm also on Twitter if you want to follow the tweets about mobile payment, which I try to post every other day or every day. Okay, that's for myself. About PayPal Mobile. So I joined PayPal Mobile about 18 months just before the hockey stick that you can see here. You can see, below what we've achieved at PayPal in the past a couple of years. We have multiplied the overall payment volume by 5. We are very proud of that, of course. We've done a lot of change in the strategy. I mean, PayPal Mobile was created in 2006 with text to give, sending money with SMS. So we've done a lot of stuff by enabling mobile flows on the web, and also clients as soon as the iPhone started to open, let's say, a world for all of us, which is not bound to carriers' relationships and to carrier, let's say, value absorption. Now that we have a high discoverability with mobile phone, you see a bunch of business model exploding. You see OboPay, all the carrier billing models like Boku and the others, which of course are enabling a very seamless user experience on digital content. But digital content is only a small piece of the business. It's only $24 to $30 billion overall market. There is a big pie outside, which is the $30 trillion offline market, which is where, of course, PayPal is very well positioned because we are expert in selling our goods and services on the internet right now. Again, I mean, OboPay was talking about, the 4 billion phones out there versus the 1 billion banks or even PC or internet-enabled PC today. The internet frontier is going to mobile. That's very clear. And there are 2 billion people today which are going to access or which are accessing the internet through mobile. So mobile is going to take over potentially the desktop space. The mobile phone by itself, and you see that with the iPhone, is more powerful than a PC. There are so many dimensions in the phone with the acceleration, the touch screen, all of the, the LBS, location-based services, and all of this stuff, which provide much richer experiences and value to consumers. The forecast is that this is going to overtake possibly the desktop business in the future. So it's very important to be there. And since 18 months at PayPal and eBay Inc., we moved mobile to a top priority at Inc. level right now. So there's a lot of focus. Our CEO was talking a few weeks ago at a retailer panel, and said that we have generated in 9 months $400 million of revenue, not revenue, but payment volume with just the eBay mobile application. So
and Eric, that's a great place for us to begin segueing into the finances, because I do want to introduce...
I could talk for hours, so thank you for stopping me.
Quite all right. Speaking of finances and money, I wanted to introduce Khare, who is the VP at the VC Venrock.
Thanks. So I am compelled to say that I'm from India, and according to Tyler's presentation, I should be wearing a turban. So I'm sorry, I'm not wearing a turban. If anybody has one, let me know. And the center of mobile innovation is Patagonia. That's definitely right. But anyway, so my background is more from the mobile side. I started a mobile company in late '99 at the best time ever, called Covigo, that was taking consumer websites and mobilizing them. We switched after the crash to mobilizing enterprise apps. And we got bought by Symbol, which is now part of Motorola, and is their mobile enterprise division. And I came out of that and joined Venrock 3 years ago. And I'm focused on mobile as well as enterprise software and digital media. The firm itself has $2 billion in management and is investing in several related areas that are up there, including mobile, transactions processing businesses, as well as wireless businesses of various kinds. Our most recent exit in the mobile space that was of note was in '06, which says something about the mobile space to some extent. It's a company called QPass that was bought by Amdocs and now operates under the open market brand name, a premium SMS billing network in the US. And related to that, we've invested in several other billing related businesses. A company called Aria is a recent investment towards the bottom of that screen. On-demand billing service for on-demand companies. We've also invested in front ends to transactional sort of business processes, a company called Athena Health in the healthcare space that went IPO a couple of years ago and is trading well right now. And then in the mobile space specifically, we've got a number of investments. We had one in mobile social networking that is now part of Good Technology. We have Tapioca, which is sending video to mobile over MMS. And we've got a number of other companies that you can see up there, including some in the location space. Very excited about mobile wallets, mobile payments, although with some trepidation around regulations and other issues that I'm sure we'll cover during the panel. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you, Dov. And with that, I'm going to open up a couple of questions from me as the moderator. I guess for each one of the panelists, I wanted to ask you, where are we? It's 2009, which is the last quarter, about to enter a new decade in mobile, but where are we specifically with mobile payments? We talked about in mobile wallet. Tyler talked a bit about some of the demographics they've aimed at. And Wenceslao has talked about some of the unbanked, but for those of us that are more affluent, maybe the iPhone users, are we just being, I don't know, lazy bourgeois Americans who are just waiting for something really great to come along? Or what do we need to see for the mobile payment, mobile wallet opportunity to really move forward more broadly in the developed markets like the US? And I'll just maybe go right down the table and ask Tyler first.
All right. I guess the question is, what do we need to have it move forward? I think that we actually don't realize how much mobile is being used for payment today, and I think that it's transparent to a lot of people. I mean, I told Scott earlier, if you just look at how many iPhones are out there, how many people are using it, how many people are downloading content and charging it right to their iTunes account, that is essentially a payment on your phone today. Margaret mentioned that they're focusing on online gaming. That is a huge market. And the mobile aspect of that, whether it's a mobile game or whether it's on Facebook, and the capability for mobile to have an instant-like transaction that allows the gamer to stay online, that market's growing immensely. And I just don't think they're published that much. So I think the use cases are out there to have a very visible mobile payment happen. That's really, to replace an activity which is writing a check for the limited amount of checks that people make today, or to be able to walk into a small merchant and not have to worry about having your wallet. It is going to be about distribution, and it is going to be about merchant acceptance to provide use cases for people to be able to use it at different places. You can do P2P today, but the companies up here, except with the exception of PayPal, aren't necessarily going to go out and spend the marketing dollars to go proliferate that message out to the entire consumers. So.
Great, thanks. Wenceslao?
I was talking with Scott in the reception before, and I was saying that I think we are, your question is where are we, and I think we are early. And I think this is proof, being in a panel together with a company that does facilitates using my mobile to pay for digital goods, and a company that does using the mobile for P2P, along with a company that uses the mobile for payments at the merchant location. It reminds me of when I would go in a panel of internet companies in 1994 that had very little in common other than somehow we were using the internet, and then things became very different and very apparent that were probably had nothing to do. I like to say that in 1970s, if you were invited to a cocktail and they asked you, what do you do? And you answered, I'm in computers, that was a perfectly fine answer in 1970. Maybe you were in semiconductors, you were doing chips, or maybe you're doing databases, it doesn't matter. You were in computers and that was good enough an answer then. It wouldn't be today. And I think that's where we are with mobile payments today.
I think that's true. I think that what's going to happen, what's interesting about the market today is that it's really because of some of the companies sitting up here, the market is really starting to accelerate. Some of the concepts that were just concepts a couple of years ago are really being proven out. There is a market for this. People will actually use it, and so we're going to see some differentiation with acceleration of the market. I think that one of the things that's going to happen for a wallet to really start to run is people are going to have to want to create another account. People are going to have to want the wallet and have to understand what it's for and really trust the provider of the wallet with whatever information and data they're putting in there. And I think in order to do that, whether it's the companies at this table or additional companies, they're going to have to create the brand and the reach that people can really believe in. And because we're in early days, I think we're just in the beginnings of seeing that begin to become a reality. I think that wallets will take off when people want to create the wallets and believe in the people that make it possible for them.
From the investment point of view, we look at a lot of what is holding the market back. And I think there are things that are probably obvious to the audience, but I'll just mention them. This is a sort of a multi-sided problem that has to be solved for mobile wallets or mobile payments to take off. On the issuing side, on the acquiring side, there is on the consumer side, on the merchant side, any sort of business or most businesses have to build up scale on both sides, and it's a chicken and egg problem to some extent. It takes time, and it's a high cap problem in the sense that there's a lot of capital that needs to be invested. It's unlike a sort of internet investment or a .com investment. It's 50, 70, $100 million to get to scale. And the numbers I've heard from and the numbers we've researched out there, you need to get to 5 million to 10 million users to get to scale where you have enough transactions flowing through that amortize your base investment in the infrastructure to get to profitability. I've heard numbers like $100+ customer acquisition costs in the early days of some of these or some of the startups, and it takes a ton of transactions and maybe a few years to make that back. So I think those are some of the things that are holding it back. I don't think the two-sided problem or the multi-sided problem goes away anytime soon. I think that's why a lot of companies in the space partner with larger banks and financial institutions or carriers to go to market. And so I think it'll take a while. It'll be slow, but there's hope. QPass for us was an interesting investment. They had to deal with carriers. I think with, in this case, a lot of mobile payments companies, you have to deal with financial institutions as well and interoperate with them. There's also regulations, FinCEN and AML and KYC, and there's a number of regulations out there that makes it a bit different. One other final point I'll add is that coming from the mobile side, mobile has taken a big knock from the venture side, primarily because it's historically, although not that much anymore, it's been driven by business development deals with mobile operators and device makers, and that takes a long time, a couple of years to get your first distribution deal, and the carrier nominates a winner. Now add a financial institution to the mix, regulations to the mix, and it gets more complex. So the downside is that it takes longer, I think. And the upside is once you've got a business at scale, high barriers to entry, and it's going to be tough for other people to enter.
So I think also this is the beginning. This is really the beginning, and we have not seen yet what mobile payment is going to become. Before the iPhone, because there's an after and before the iPhone. Before the iPhone, we were all working with carriers and very painfully, trying to gain discoverability, being on their deck, and clearly that was not working. I would say that now that the iPhone is here, and now that there is competition, even around the iPhone with Android, bringing some new, let's say, concept, business models, and so on and so forth, and BlackBerry, of course, we have here a landscape which is shaping, which is becoming very interesting for us, because now the value has shifted. What's really important now is what is important for the consumer. What value do you give to the consumer? What asset do you have on the device with those applications? That's why all of the device manufacturers right now are going after an app store so that they get this asset on the device, because this asset is what is going to keep the consumer to use those devices. So very important changes right now in this world. And for getting this consumer value, there is a lot which is opening right now for mobile commerce, and that's very attractive. You can see that the buzz is just starting on the iPhone. I mean, there are credit card acquisition application. You have a Starbucks app, of course, everybody knows about it. The buzz is huge, and this is just the beginning. There are new business models which are going to appear through this kind of devices, which are going to compete with the Visa, MasterCard of this world in terms of providing better experiences to consumers and better value to consumers, and then, of course, to merchants. There is, of course, I can echo this issue of the issuing and acquiring loop for new startups. Getting a base of consumer to transact with a base of merchant is a chicken and the egg issue. And if you don't have already a huge base of consumer, or if you have an acquisition engine for consumer like eBay, PayPal has, it's very, very difficult to work in this space. And so Worldpay is struggling in the US. They are looking at other regions also which are very promising, and where the pain point to move cash is very, very high. If you look at India and China, for example, that to move money in those countries is extremely painful. And then there is way for new ways of payment to appear, because banks are not even there in the countryside. There are no cards. People don't even know about what is a payment card and a POS. So you will see those new business models appearing in those countries, of course, with transaction rates which are very, very small. And so there's a lot of transaction for this business model to become profitable. So,
hey, Eric, can I ask you a question? Because
yeah.
I want to pose this to the panelists, and this will be the last moderator question, because we are going to end at 8:30 on time, and I want to make sure we get some audience questions in. So last call to pass your cards to the end if you have a question. But you just talked about pain points, and I wanted to ask each one of the panelists. We have a room full of entrepreneurs. This is literally ground zero for mobile innovation on a global basis here in Silicon Valley. What are some of the opportunities that are still out there in terms of what solutions do you think the market hasn't delivered yet? What would you recommend people be working on in terms of?
So, just to continue on this pain point stuff, in emerging markets, the pain is there. So you need to deliver a payment engine that works, and particularly the cash-in and cash-out mechanism, which are the most complex to deliver. In emerging markets, not the technology issue. It's really the regulatory cash-in, cash-out issue, which is difficult to fix. In developed countries, that's very different. What you need to deliver is value, so that consumer don't take their cards and swipe, because it's so simple to do that you need to have much more value through the phone to provide this kind of user experience, which are going to move consumers from the card to the phone. And there is here, a capacity for innovation and value generation for consumer, which is completely amazing. That's why also we are opening our platform and our APIs, PayPal is the first one to do that, so that innovators can really develop those very creative applications that can leverage our platform when it comes to having all of the payment services that are needed to make it happen.
Margaret, what do you see as solutions that are still out there?
You know, I think that a number of the panelists have alluded to it, but it's something that still needs a lot of work in order for mobile payments to work well globally, which I think it has got to be part of the solution here. And that is just there's a tremendous regulatory burden across the market, and country to country it's different. Depending on exactly what the application or the solution is, it's different. And I think that as people begin to crack that nut and really find ways of addressing regulatory issues globally rather than just region by region or jurisdiction by jurisdiction, we're going to see a lot more uptake across the market.
Great. Wenceslao, Tyler, any additional thoughts?
I completely agree, actually. I think in the emerging markets, the pain points are there, and there's actually an appetite to pay. From a consumer perspective, it's really how do you navigate those regulatory markets? How do you build out an infrastructure that can provide for cash in and cash out? And if you try to do it yourself, most likely you're going to fail. It's too complicated from an entire ecosystem perspective. There's too many players in that ecosystem that could block you if you wanted to. So if you can't figure out how to play from an end-to-end perspective, so there's a huge BD quotient to it. You most likely will not be able to do it. In the developed markets, the pain points aren't as clear. As Eric said, what's the motivation for somebody not to whip out their credit card and pay? And so it's really finding whether it's just some huge convenience factor, which is not an easy find, or it's finding the niches initially in those markets, whether they're unacquired merchants or they're consumers who don't have those cards in their pockets. And those pain points do exist, and those can be significant markets as well. But we do think, OPE thinks it's going to take a little bit longer in developed markets to evolve.
I'd like to make a comment regarding the convenience of paying with a mobile phone. That is something that we're trying to understand why 60-year-old in Colorado takes to it so quickly and with so much eagerness. And there's something about having easier access to the phone, something about the gesture of just tapping and getting that instant feedback of the text confirmation. But John Reed, chairman of Citi, who's on our board, was telling us that when they were first making a big push at Citibank to take plastic mainstream, credit cards mainstream, there was a large group within the bank that argued that paying with plastic was not more convenient than paying with a check. You still had to hand something over, they had to hand it back to you, you have to sign. And in theory, I can see how someone can build a case. I can see also how in theory that doesn't work. It's a lot easier to pay with a credit card. This I see also with a mobile phone paying. Once you paid a couple of times by simply tapping your phone, it feels very awkward paying with a credit card.
Great. And with that, we're going to shift into the audience Q&A. And the first question we have, and I love this because it shows they've been paying attention for almost a decade. Mobile payments has been reported as imminent since CTIA 2001. And I know that because I was there. So to the panelists, why is its growth naturally imminent right now? What's changed? I'll offer from an analyst perspective, are smartphones playing a role? Application stores? The sheer growth of the mobile internet, mobile browsers? What feels so different right now? Anyone want to just jump in?
Start. Indeed, waving a phone for us sounds like it's obvious. It's like this is going to happen. It's going to be there. When I show those kind of phones to my kids, they say, "Dad, I want it right now. Can I throw my phone away? Can I get that right now?" So yes, we get it, and we get it for a while already. When it comes to making those transactions so seamless with contactless, for example, it raises a bunch of questions, technology questions, security questions, liability questions. You take any kind of system based on contactless today, who is going to be liable if something goes wrong? You look at the internet today. The banks, are supposed to be liable for fraud. Well, guess who is paying for fraud on the internet? The merchants. Okay, so think about mobile payment tomorrow. Tomorrow you have mobile payment, and the banks are supposed to be liable. Guess going to pay for fraud? The carriers. So that's those are the kind of mechanisms which are slowing down, stopping this kind of movement, because there is so much money at stake, so much liability at stake that the ecosystem partners need to be much more involved to make it happen. And that's why, in fact, this has been so slow, because some of the key questions have not been addressed. Carriers think you can make a lot of money through transactions and interchange. Well, guess what? Interchange is being pressured so much that there is less and less money to be made on interchange. Look at Europe, look at Asia, and how the interchange is going there. The banks are losing money on acquisition of transactions right now. So this is really not the place where you can make money. And if you try to justify a payment system, let's say, or technology or additional hardware on the phone on this type of business model, it's very, very difficult to get it started.
I'll add to that. I think it's been imminent for a long time. I agree. Kind of like mobile was. I remember doing the rounds of Sand Hill Road in '99, waving literally a green screen WAP phone saying it's arrived at that time. And it took a few more years to arrive. But the thing I look for is where's the pull coming from? Where's the market that has the need for mobile payments? And I think in the US, there are 3 or 4 such areas that are interesting. One of them, I would say, is the proliferation of location information and broadband on wireless means that location fixes are becoming easy. And so a lot of local content, local business information is going mobile. And that is one of the vectors that, and time itself, that is driving local merchants to digitize over time. There's been, there's enough people out there that say that local merchants are just too, quote-unquote, dumb to go online. They need help. They need agencies to help them do SEM, SEO, etc. But increasingly, I'm seeing evidence that local merchants are getting savvy to local advertising, online advertising. And I think pretty much the next step after that is local transactions, whether done over the web or in person. So I think that's a vector that's going to push local merchants to want monetization, whether it's through Bling Nation or other such services. Another example is on the gaming side, and I know Margaret with Boku is addressing that as well. Getting online gamers to pay for digital goods in different ways. I think that's a market that's pulling, that needs a solution out there. Remittances, while not a growing market, it's a large and stable market. A lot of people have gone after that, but I think that's still a need that's out there. And then one final thing I'll mention is a market that I don't think anytime soon is creating new startups. I think that's m-commerce, in the sense of being able to buy something on your phone in the US. I think existing brands, whether they be eBay or Amazon or others, are going to extend onto mobile and are extending onto mobile. And it's going to be hard to displace that brand over time. Maybe in a few years, when there's a number of those brands up there, there's an opportunity to build on top of that, but I think for the time being, not m-commerce. So I guess my main point is there are certain markets that are pulling, and I think it's good to address those markets as opposed to think about a technology for technology's sake.
So Dave, just a quick follow-up. So M-Wallet is still an investable value proposition?
I think in the context of these growing markets, the sort of where the pull is coming from, it is. In and of itself, if there's an M-Wallet that does just for itself, where you can send a payment to another person if you've had dinner and want to split a bill, I think that use case is a bit weak from a value proposition point of view. But if there's a gamer and he has to have that sword on World of Warcraft, he's going to pay for it any way he can, and that's a must-have value proposition. So I think there's an opportunity in some of these must-have use cases.
Yeah, you could add to that is that for this digital content gaming type of experience, it's about enabling payment in a very, very easy way in the middle of the gaming experience, so that people really buy stuff as they play, and that's what companies like Boku and us and so on and so forth are focusing on, just the one-click experience, so that for this type of commerce, you provide a lot of value to the consumer by allowing him to do this kind of purchase in a very, very easy way.
So Tyler and Wenceslao, what's your response to Dave's thoughts in terms of you guys are very early in the market and focusing on market segments that are maybe some of the push, maybe some of the pull? Any reaction to that?
I actually agree, is the pull. And the original question is, why is it imminent now? I think that the proliferation of mobile kind of globally makes it more imminent now. The proliferation of technologies within your mobile that allows for secure transactions, whether it's some type of secure application that you can transmit data securely, not just pure plain text, SMS, some USSD, advanced IVR. Those types of things allow for you to bring services to the emerging markets with limited infrastructure in place. So that is one of the reasons we view it to be imminent now. And the other thing is you actually can point to proof points now. You can point to pockets in the globe that it's actually happening, and people are using it, and they're creating use cases for it. And then if you go to replicate those use cases, clearly that's the reason to go use it. Anecdotally, the reason I think that it's changing is really from the partner pull that we get. I mean, we have more inbound calls than we can absolutely deal with, and even over the last 2 years, it's really the partners who are then channeling consumers' desires for a product. And a lot of these partners are far out in terms of they view projects to be 3-4 years, and in some cases we view that to be okay. We think it's going to be a very patient game in some markets, and that if you are around at the end and you've established yourself during that game, you will win because you will be the de facto choice. And that is part of the way we're attacking it. In other markets, we view the market is now, today, and you got to get out there as quick as possible. So it's different around the globe.
I also think that every successful space or technology or technology-enabled business had the same dynamic where it was imminent for a very long time and it didn't happen, and all of a sudden it happened all together. You can say it broadly for the internet, but you can pick whichever one sector within technology, whether it's software as a service or anything. And they were predicted as imminent for a very long time, and when they happen all very quickly. I think the same is going to play out for mobile. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen or not. This kind of mobile wallet is when it's going to happen. I think there are, in my mind, 3 key mega trends driving this. One is technology changes that we've been talking quite a lot about, the proliferation of mobile data, the opening up of the handsets, etc. The second one is regulation. There is a sea of change in regulation, not only going on in Washington right now around payments, but around the world, I would argue, and very other changes that seem invisible to non-industry participants, but Visa and MasterCard all of a sudden not being owned by the banks anymore and being owned by normal shareholders who care about their bottom line and not the bank's bottom line. It's a huge change, and it just happened. And the third and last, and perhaps even the most powerful, is a demographic trend. And these 3 trends are converging to produce an enormous change in payments. Change tends to happen in waves, and voice, nothing happened for a couple of decades, and all of a sudden it got totally disrupted in the last few years. Payments, nothing has really changed for 3 decades, and I think that I would be pretty confident in betting that in 10 years we're all going to be paying in very, very different ways. If we wait until one of these CTI analysts confidently says that all these trends have arrived, you will be late. So you need to find ways in which you can play now to buy that optionality. I think what we are doing, for example, is a neat model that works in these communities right now, and it's a way for us to buy the optionality. It's a business that works in the current environment. Would I move from Patagonia to California with my wife and kids for that business? No. I think there is a lot more. I think I see a lot of upside, but that's a business that works in the current environment that allows me to be a player and have the optionality of capturing these opportunities as they come, because they will come.
And Margaret, you get the last word on the topic.
You know, so perhaps the most simplistic word. I've been listening to all this about, you know, why is it taking 10 years and why all of a sudden now is it accelerating? And I think everybody has made some very good points about it, and I second almost all of them. I mean, there's just been a lot more penetration of handsets, for example. People go, yeah, I have a mobile now, whereas 10 years ago that may not have been the case. But the other thing I would say, and this is the simplistic bit, I would say ringtones. That 10 years ago we didn't have a use case that presented such a phenomenally huge market that it was worth dealing with regulatory junk. It was worth dealing with technology junk. All of a sudden people said, hey, wait a second, people are spending billions of dollars paying for something with their mobile. We can do this in other markets too. It's not a tiny market. It's a billion-dollar market that nobody thought was even, you know, worth anything to start off. All of a sudden, it's worth overcoming all these hurdles. And I think that along with the things other people have said, it's these big use cases that have made people say, hey, wait a minute, we're ready to accelerate now.
Margaret, I'll just add to that in terms of what I see in the market with applications and app stores. People are doing things now that they weren't even doing 15 months ago, and they're doing them by the billions. So I think there are a lot of things that have come together simultaneously. So we're about to wrap up with the last question from the audience, and it's hopefully it'll be a relatively short question, but the most number of questions we got from the audience are around security. Just wanted to ask, what do you think about security going forward? If we do have a mobile wallet, if everything is on your device, you know, what happens when you lose it? Is that still a business opportunity out there? Is that the Achilles heel for the industry sector, or going forward? And Wenceslao, it looks like you want to answer that first.
I think there is a huge opportunity in regards to security, because we have been trained to think of security in a very particular way, carrying our name in a piece of plastic that says my name and my last name. It has my account number in there. It has all the information that someone needs to get money from my account. It's crazy when you think about it, that we're willing to do that. So when you go to a merchant and the merchant says it's $55, basically you're telling, here, this is all my information, you go help yourself to my account, get the money, and hopefully you get just that amount, not a different one, and hopefully you don't do it again. And that's what you're doing. And the merchant is saying, okay, and he gets all that critical information, sensitive information, and handles it to another party, that's it to another party, to another 4 or 5 parties, and then it comes back. And we're hoping that they all behave and they don't take your information. That's why we're nuts about information and ID theft, etc. But because the system is very, very poorly designed. If you were to design a system from scratch using today's best practices, today's best technology, you would never do it like that. You would have it in a way in which you carry something that doesn't say anything about you, and even if you want to read the chip inside of this, doesn't say anything about you, and you use it only one time. And when you pay the merchant doesn't know anything about it. All they know is that you gave them $55 and those are good funds, but they don't know where they came from, what your name is, or anything else. And in general, I think when you have a connected device that has a lot of processing power, that has storage capacity, that has connectivity, the security should be a lot less of an issue than what it is today.
I would add to that that there are a couple of issues here related to fraud, but that the data that we're talking about that's subject to this risk is on the mobile device potentially. It's also data in motion that could be going through various of these parties, and it could be data in rest at the other end at some data center out there. And there are security and fraud issues related to all of those. And I think there's a fantastic opportunity at all those levels for entrepreneurs. We've got a company called Semtech out in San Diego that has partnered with Verifone such that anytime you swipe your card, that data is encrypted right there before it goes through the network. And the idea there is to...
I will discuss that, because who has the keys for encryption? Who owns the keys? I can break that very easily.
All right.
Yeah, no, don't go there.
We have gone there.
It's weak. Okay.
We have gone there with our money, and it's actually working very well. So
well, I would
you're welcome to try hacking it.
I know the system. I designed them before. So
then can you join us?
No, absolutely not. Well, no. So to come
The
back,
end of Semtech, I must say.
coming back to the question about security. There's two elements here. You have the company which is providing payment systems, which needs to implement some level of security to protect itself, protect the money. That's about, it's a link with risk management. So getting pretty quickly into risk management. How much risk management do we put into the system? How much security do we put into the system to still provide the best user experience without having a cost of security which is infinite? So it's a very tricky question. The second point is consumer protection. Consumers are going to have a lot of stuff on these phones as we move forward, and having a level of protection here, which is important by having some of this information either not sitting on the phone in the cloud, well protected, like on PayPal, for example, or or if it is on the phone, it has to be protected in a way which is much more serious than what you see right now on the current phones. The mobile phone today or tomorrow is going to be the most attacked device in the world. And as a consumer, I will be very worried to have some of my own privacy, or let's say critical payment information in this phone. So as a consumer, I want to be convinced that whoever I'm going to give those credentials to is going to protect me. And I don't think this message right now is passed clearly to the consumers. So this is something which is very important. Take a system like the one we've seen, which is really nice. I mean, waving a phone on a terminal. Who is liable if something goes wrong? My money. Who is going to pay me back if something goes wrong, if the system is broken or is breached by a hacker? Those are good questions to ask and to get answers from. So it's very important to look at this in a holistic standpoint and not saying, oh yes, we encrypt from this point to this point. Yes, but who has the keys? And is the person who has the keys, is this person a reasonable person that I can trust, that has no way to get these keys leaked in the system?
Eric, you and Dave have just set up the closing point I want to make, because we're out of time right now. We're going to have a quick closing comments. But from my perspective, I posed the question as the moderator, what were some of the inflection points? And I think if we're talking about mobile wallet, not just in terms of mobile payments or mobile money, but literally physically replacing your wallet, if you're like me, my wallet is actually getting smaller and smaller as the years go by. My pictures are on my phone. My business contact information is on my phone. I can't say my credit cards are there yet, but it's coming pretty quickly. The one thing that's going to hold me back, though, is this. It's my driver's license. And so what I would focus on, if I were you in the room, is I would focus on some of the security issues and the ability to replace government IDs, put that on your mobile device, because once that's there, there really is no reason to carry a wallet around if your entire identity, including your legal identity to legal authorities, is actually on your device itself. I think that'll be a key inflection point going forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vivek Kumar for a couple closing comments, and thank you very much.